Excitement.
Shenanigans.
Ultra dynamic.
Passionate.
Clash of the Titans.
As far as excitement and just enthusiasm, there's not a better rivalry than Lakeside, Lake Hamilton.
Lakeside School was founded in 1928. 19 years later, another school surrounded by a lake opened across Hot Springs, Lake Hamilton. When Lake Hamilton finally got a football program in 1966, a showdown between the two schools with crosstown ties seemed imminent.
The Lake Hamilton game was started in 68 or 9. And ironically, the coach that started that program at Lake Hamilton was Ronnie Moore. And he was a graduate of Lakeside and a basketball player, but never played football.
Legendary Lakeside coach Chick Austin played a big part in the forming of this rivalry.
When it started, he was the coach at Lakeside, and Ronnie Moore was alumni, and he and Ronnie were friends. And Frank Spanauer played for Coach Austin here also, and played quarterback. And I think that in itself, I think, helped in the player relationship as a rivalry.
The game did not start out as much of a tradition as it is today.
Lake Hamilton, that was their startup, so a lot of us didn't get to play but 1 or 2 innings because they put the second and third string in pretty quick. It was just a very, they just had not had a background in football at that time, so a few years later, different story, but the first few years they were a pretty weak team.
But one game in 1979 changed everything.
Our first game with Lake Hamilton when I was head coach, I think that might have been the start. It was in '79, the first time we played, and it was at Lake Hamilton's old field. The last time Lakeside played in the old field, and it was, the bleachers weren't very big, so during the game, a lot of the fans would line up on a cable right behind the bench. And the game got real intense, and it was, I believe it was tied at the end of the game. Well, by that time, those fans that were at the cable were backed up against the bench. So we went out and had the coin toss for the overtime, and it was on the north end, I believe, at the old field. And when I looked around, when the overtime started, well, those people that were behind the bench were in front of the bench easing up to the hash mark. And when that game was over, they were on the field. And luckily we won. We won with a pass. It was 7-7. We scored. And when they got the ball, we were lucky to get a good hit and a fumble and recovered it, and that ended the game with that. But it was a very good game, and probably the most exciting game I've been in because the fans were right there on you, and it was just really a lot of fun.
Little did they know that this rivalry was now on the rise.
What do you eat? Wolf meat.
Ram meat. How you like it? How you like it? Raw, raw, raw. As
the Lakeside-Lake Hamilton rivalry gained prestige, traditions began to form at both schools during the week of the big game.
Even from when we were kids, they would be all over the place, like cheerleaders and pep rallies and stuff.
Had signs and stuff, bonfires.
We would have pep rallies
the
night before, and a big bonfire, and our pep rallies in the gym. You would have them in the gym, and they were always a little more louder than usual, more skits than usual. Brought more people in there.
That's
Sometimes
right.
we'd have older people that might come in and say something or.
They, would have the week of Spirit Week before the Lakeside game,
And one of the days that I do remember they had was Rich and Cool Day, because to Lake Hamilton at that time, they thought Lakeside was the rich and cool, the preppy. And of course, Lakeside had the hillbilly days, and they thought we all had on cowboy boots and drove trucks and that sort of thing. So one of my favorite moments as a teacher on Rich and Cool Day was I had a student. He walked in just in his normal clothes on Rich and Cool Day, and I said, "You didn't dress up for Rich and Cool Day. What's the deal?" He said, "Yes, I did. I wore socks." And so he had socks on with his shoes, and normally he didn't wear socks, and so that was his version of being rich and cool.
Lakeside head coach Paul Humphreys also noticed a change on the field.
Lake Hamilton started increasing their play, and we're getting better and better every year. Actually, when Lake Hamilton beat us, and then at our place, and then when we went back over, then we won that game.
This back and forth trend would continue until 1984, when Lake Hamilton began to assume a role of dominance in the rivalry.
Teams beat each other. Rivalry. It's not a rivalry unless both sides win some of the games. You can call it everything you want to. But in the last few years, when you look at all those one team winning all the games, that's hardly constitutes a rivalry. It's up to both. It's up to the team that's not in power, so to speak, to make it one.
Once again, a single game was able to change the entire course of this rivalry.
I stepped in, like I say, pretty rough times, and I think Lake Hamilton had beaten Lakeside 16 years in a row, and we beat them. We beat them 13-12, and came down to the very last part of the game, and it was just great. We made a goal line stand to stop them, and then we. Of course, we were up 13-12. But we made some great plays defensively.
There was a few seconds left in the game. I had a sack on the quarterback, put him out of field goal range. Kicker missed the field goal. Into the game.
This win was monumental for both the Rams and their fans.
It was huge, huge. Everybody was excited. It was if we didn't win a single game that whole year, that was one game that you could tell the hallways were ecstatic that we won.
It was such a big win for our fans that they kept the scoreboard on all night long and all weekend. It's like, and I walked out after I got all the kids out of the stands, out of the field house, and check on the injuries, see if anybody was hurt or anything like that. And there were still hundreds, if not thousands, of people still left in the stand. And I stayed up here at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and they didn't want to turn the lights off. It was that big of a win for our fans.
By this time, the rivalry had risen to its greatest height yet, but with every rise, there must come a great fall. As the rivalry intensified, off-field shenanigans became a tradition of their own.
Shenanigans were definitely something to look forward to every year. We would always plan that
Night before.
way ahead of time. yeah, that was. I think a lot of people look forward to that almost as much as the game.
Eggs, anything like that.
Yeah.
Spray paint. But
yes, there was some other stuff. A lot of other stuff.
Over time, it seemed to some these shenanigans were detracting from the game as a whole.
The series became known for some extracurricular activity off the field, which I call hooliganism. And both sides were responsible. It's not just one school, not just one school exclusively. But a lot of activity that had nothing to do with the ball playing, and certainly didn't enhance the status of either school.
goofing off and what was supposed to be building your own team up got carried away a little too far. Both schools, it happened all the time, but it ended up getting too carried away. We would have played it every year. It just got out of hand, but it wasn't the athletes that caused this rivalry to go down the drain. It was it was people that weren't in school and people that were in school that weren't playing. There was always nothing but a lot of admiration and respect on the field on both sides of the ball when we played.
Well, me and him were assistant coaches, and we're not always privy to all the whys and why nots. You just coach and do your job and teach. And I think, the reason given at the time was there's too much stuff happening during the week before the game, painting and vandalism.
Out of the school system.
Yeah, outside the school system. Yeah. There was too much of that going on, they felt like. Okay, so that was the reason we were given.
In 1996, one of these shenanigans included the killing of a German Shepherd dog by Lakeside students, an act that was retaliated against a year later by Lake Hamilton students.
Well, an incident where there was a goat was killed and painted, which was my senior year of high school, was probably the straw that broke the camel's back.
Walston's assumptions were probably correct, as just 2 years later, Lakeside and Lake Hamilton would meet for the final time. In the following years, people would wonder if the shenanigans were the entire cause of the rivalry's cancellation.
You could easily point to that being the cause, but I think really the cause was, you got to win back and forth for it to be a rivalry.
It was just the lopsided nature of the game. I think Lakeside, they quit playing us. We didn't. It wasn't a mutual thing. They just dropped us from their schedule, and I can understand that because we were a bigger school and they had trouble competing with us. So, I don't blame them for doing that. But no, when we quit playing is because Lakeside actually dropped us from their schedule.
There were some bad things that happened or things that you see as a rivalry, but you have that statewide. You'll have people stealing a rock in Murfreesboro. Pocahontas, I believe, Pocahontas Walnut Ridge played, and they had a bell, and they would vandalize each other's field and steal things. Those are things that happened at Lakeside and Lake Hamilton rivalry, and that's what makes a rivalry game.
Others have taken neutral positions on the topic.
There's several reasons it stopped, but I'd be stepping on toes if I told the truth right now. So I'm just going to plead the fifth because it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't make any difference.
Regardless, the players and coaches from both sides would have to move on with their programs.
That's probably over our head.
Yeah, like I say, that's the administrators. They're the ones that made that decision.
They make that decision,
Yeah,
the
we
school
just do
boards.
whatever they tell us to do. That's our job.
That's right.
So,
we can find another game to play besides that one.
That's right. Life goes on.
For nearly 2 decades, fans would desire just one more matchup between the two squads. 19 years after their last matchup, they are finally receiving the revival they have been asking for.
Right now, it's all about what has happened in the past, and we're looking forward to where it's going in the future. I think both sides. So we want a good, clean game and a good show for our community. And for us right now, we're looking for a new path.
In 2017, it was announced that Lakeside and Lake Hamilton would meet in football in 2018 for the first time since 1999. In preparation for the big game, many have reflected on the importance of this rivalry.
I think if you haven't been here or part of that, and it's been 19 years, you wouldn't understand the true impact it had on this community. I mean, it was the biggest game of the week.
It's still for the kids.
Oh, yeah.
All of it for the kids, you know, their sake. You know, rivalries, you get to bring back people that hadn't been here in 30 years. I'm even talking to people now that's talking about coming back just for that one game. You know, it's a rivalry, and that's what it's supposed to be. You know, you hear all the negative, and it really is not that much negative, because kids are kids. You know, no matter if it's one game or the next, you know, they just gonna be there, and that's part of it. So I'm glad to hear it come back. That's one of the reasons I want to come do the interview today, because it is coming back, and it needs to be. The kids in town are around each other all the time. They know each other by first names, you know, and it's all about the kids and the people that built programs, and they get to come back and see their programs and see all the things, new things that have happened, and it's glory. It's just glorifying.
These are kids they grew up with and played summer baseball with and pee-wee football with, and they know who's on the other side, and they know those guys. So that's what makes a rivalry so special.
Current Lake Hamilton head coach Tommy Gillerin has had first-hand experience with this rivalry as a Wolf.
My senior year, we actually ran a halfback pass, and I actually the one who caught it in the back of the end zone to take the lead, and then we scored it again later, but I think we ended up beating them 28-12, but at the time it was 14-12, and then I scored and made it 21-12, and then we scored one later, but that kind of broke the game open. And so my memory was I actually caught a touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone right over there. Of course, it was grass back then, and it was a halfback pass.
While he does not have any previous experience in this rivalry, Lakeside head coach Jared McBride is familiar with rivalry games of this magnitude.
I've been a part of some really good ones. I was at Battle of the Bulldog, Springdale High School and Fayetteville High School, the 100th annual game, and that's a special football game. I've been a part of Benton Bryant and the Salt Bowl, and I know what good rivalry matchups are like, and I expect this one to be just the same.
Like McBride, many are anticipating an amazing atmosphere for August 31st.
Coach McBride has done a great job over here. I know Coach Gillerin's got the people out there really excited. You know, he's an old school Lake Hamilton guy, and got the people really excited. Got the kids coming back out, and you know that's what they need, and you know that's what people need around here, is just the kids that are here competing against each other.
It'll just be like a festival without the merry-go-rounds. You know, it'll be just like it'll be a lot bigger than Oktoberfest, I promise you.
My brother Jason and I both have all of our kids. His two have graduated now, but I have 3 kids here at Lakeside. I have a senior, a junior, and a freshman this year. Just tell everybody I wanted to become a goat farmer and raise a bunch of rams. I'm going to be having an emotional tug-of-war. It won't be I want this team to win. I want it to be a great game, and I want it to be a fair game, and I want everybody to have fun. But it's going to be an emotional tug-of-war with me.
With all this in mind, Bob Weisner of the Sentinel Record hopes for one thing on both sides.
I just hope that it can be said that after this game that this is that this can be characterized for all time's sake as a friendly rivalry, because that's the most important thing, is to leave here August 31 with a sense of good feeling about themselves, about their school, and about the other guy.
One thing is for sure, Hot Springs is abuzz for this Rivalry Renewed.